Hello again. So we're back with Democratic Socialism 2. Again, these are coming at socialism from a slightly different direction. I think all of the other original videos contain a lot of really, really good content, but this hopefully will help you make sense of them in a way that's going to make the essay writing a little bit easier. We'll be coming at it from pretty much the same position, looking at human nature, the way in which that flows down through the model, and the way in which the state is essentially there to work with the social model and the economic model. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. I'm going to get this party started. We're going to start off by looking at the context. Now, don't forget that we're looking at a sort of linear function here of ideologies. And so the democratic socialism that we're looking at will, to a certain extent, be an evolution of the revolutionary socialism that we were looking at in the previous video. So we're going to start with human nature. And with human nature, we're going to say, yes, we definitely have empathy, but is that it? Or is that a naive position? Is it wrong to think that maybe there's something else in the human condition, and can we perhaps do something constructive and positive with that? So society, yes, we are collective, but at the same time, everybody, if they're an individual, perhaps might want to express their individual opinion and their individual identity within the collective, or with that, well, hopefully at no cost to the collective. The economy, we all know, well, you guys can read that collectivism restricts economic growth, and the state, well, historically it refused to wither away, and it certainly struggled to manage complex systems like a social model and an economic model effectively. And of course, we have the simple observation that a revolution will tend to chuck out as much that's good as is bad. So maybe we want to achieve change through a more gradual system, a system that will preserve the functional aspects of the state while rejecting the bits that don't work. That's a gradualism. I don't know, through maybe a system like democracy, for instance. So once again, as I said, we're going to start human nature. We're going to see what that does to society and the economy, and the way in which the state will respond to those particular structures. So here we go. We're going to start off with social democracy, and we're straight off with a really naff yin and yang, but I thought it seemed appropriate in that we're looking here at basically a dualistic position. Yes, we are empathetic. Individuals are empathetic. We are born into this social model, but at the same time, we have a keen sense of identity, and we will want to express that identity from time to time. And emphasizing the collective over the individual can be problematic. If we look at the failure of the Soviet Union and massive socialist experiments, a lot of that comes to do with the way in which the individual is consistently repressed in favor of the collective. And we find from the historical record that humans have a tendency to reject methods that repress the individual massively. But not just that, perhaps there's something that can be gained from it. Perhaps there's something that can be gained from individual expression, and maybe we shouldn't just rule it out at the very get-go. So the critical thing here then is that we have a dualist, a balance of empathy and individualism within the human nature. And here you see that human nature for social democrats is an evolution of the position relative to our socialists, our revolutionary socialists. Revolutionary socialists reject the idea of individualism, even as the vanguard does exactly that. But the idea is that we say, look, we can't expect everybody to be collective. Everyone is an individual as much as they are a member of that society. And so we need to recognize that and build that into our thinking. But of course, that's going to have consequences for society. And here we see not just a pure collective, but rather a harmonic that seeks to square the circle of collectivism and individualism. So we have individual expression. Yes, we allow people to be individuals, but within that, they're still operating within a Gemeinschaft. We're still operating within a society that's got links between individuals that are emotional or not rational or intrinsic or innate. The critical thing is that we also have, working on top of this, various collective forces, top-down institutions created inevitably by the state that seek to encourage everybody to recognize their common endeavor. Things like hospitals, education, BBC, all of these are common experiences that we have in this country. Once upon a time, all of our services came from the States, so things like British Telecom, British Gas, and the water boards, all of those things supplying us with the things that we needed, and including within that a park, the massive way in which the local authorities run our public parks is a huge part of our identity and our social model. And of course, the economy. So here we're seeing the economy being used as much as social policy as economic policy, in that the economy is structured in such a way to achieve social goals, such as everyone is engaged, everybody has enough money, and other things like that. So here we're looking at a balanced society, a society that seeks to balance the individual with the collective through empathy and state institutions, I think, is probably the way to look at that. So let's just step back now and look at the economy. We said earlier that collectivism inhibits the ability of an economy to grow. That is just a basic fact. And so what we're trying to recognize, what we're trying to do here is to allow individual dynamism, to allow individual agents to seek to deliver, or to deliver the impetus for growth. For as that A.E. Housman, I think it was, who said, the thing about capitalism is that it's trying to harness the nastiest of motives for the best of gains, or words to that effect. So we're looking for individual self-interest to drive economic growth. However, that has to operate within the collective model. And so that growth, yes, individuals should be driving it, but if that growth is just benefiting that individual, then we have a problem. The benefits of that growth should be shared across society. And again, the growth and indeed the economy should be the servant of the society. Society should not be the servant of the economy. That's very, very, very important. And so what we have here is the mixed economy, the practical implementation of those ideas through things like, okay, yes, we will have private enterprise, but that's going to be taxed and it's going to be regulated. We are going to take your profits and we're going to redistribute that back into society, and it's going to be regulated so you can't exploit your workers. So you can be a private enterprise, fine, but that's going to operate under the aegis of the state. Similarly, the state then, or not similarly at all, the state will also undertake action in the economy on its own agenda. So we will have nationalized industry, so things that are organized for objectives other than simple profit. It may be full employment, it may be the provision of employment services, essential services like water, gas, power, that sort of stuff. Because maybe people think that profiteering from basic human needs is a bad thing. But the critical thing here is that we have this mixed economy. We have private enterprise, regulated and taxed, and we have nationalized industry to provide the things that the market can't, or to provide the things that the market shouldn't, or to provide the things that perhaps if they're being provided at market prices, they can't be afforded by a lot of people. They're out of the reach of some people in that society. So if you think about these four things, for instance, those four ideas, the investment return on those is generational. You're going to be struggling really to get the water board, the power, the level of infrastructure that's required to build those. You're not going to do it really in a market context unless the government is going to guarantee your contract. But now I'm wibbling. Sorry, I'm going off topic and I'm getting engaged in all sorts of things. Critical thing here is that we're looking at a mixed economy. We're looking at redistribution. We're looking at private enterprise, yes, but that enterprise is going to be taxed. We're looking at state industry, yes, and that's going to be there to provide things that the market won't or can't or shouldn't. So there we go. That basically is what you might call Keynesian economics, and those of you who are doing economics were probably well ahead of me on that. Right, so let's just look at this now. Let's look at this model. So we have empathy, yes, but we also have self-interest, and both of those are manifest in the economy and in society. Now, if we've got self-interest in here, then the state is going to have to step up, because the state cannot rely on empathy to regulate these two models. Okay, so we're going to have to see the state getting involved in the regulation of society and indeed the regulation of the economy, because we've unleashed self-interest into this particular picture. So what is the state going to do? It's going to engineer things. It's going to run social institutions. I mentioned these previously, things like education, things like hospital, things that emphasize the commonality of our effort, the community of our effort, and things that make sure that individuals see themselves as operating within this wider social model. So, yes, we're going to see lots of laws coming through, lots of regulations on that front. And we're also going to see Keynesian economics to make sure that the economy is the servant of society, that society is not existing to serve the economy. That's not how we want it to. That's not how we want it to work. So the state has a massive role in engineering both social outcomes and indeed in economic outcomes through things like redistribution there, managing of nationalized industries and that sort of stuff. So we have the engineer state balancing society through institutions and regulations and balancing the economy through nationalized industry and regulations and taxation. Right. Now, I think I've rattled through that at a tremendous pace. There's going to be an awful lot of questions, I'm sure, off that. But the critical thing to remember is that because we've unleashed self-interest here, we're looking at that dualism. We've got empathy, yes, but self-interest. If we're going to unleash that on society, if we're going to unleash that on the economy, then the state is going to have to come in as the balancing item. The state is going to have to come in to balance self-interest with empathy. Because if we let self-interest go, as we saw in the industrial society, it will just trample over everything in its path. Right. Whew. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to upload this. We're going to look at the socialism. We're going to look at the third way next. Hopefully this will bring it all around and we'll tidy it up then. Critical thing, spoiler alert. When we're looking at the third way, we shouldn't necessarily look at the third way as a reaction to the failures of democratic socialism. The third way is essentially a reaction to the extreme ends of neoliberalism that we saw working through the UK and indeed to a certain extent in America during the late 80s and into the 90s. And that's where I'm going to stop. Great talking to you. Trust you're all well. Drop me a line if this helps. Drop me a line if it doesn't. Let me know what you want to see and we'll get on with it. All the best for now. Bye now.